Okay, so summarizing major contributions to the body of knowledge under review. That's so you've said, oh, I've talked about these people, this is why, this is important. Making sure that you've evaluated them. So making sure you've said, you know what, everybody listens to the 2003 Facebook survey on youth and identity, but that was an optional survey done on a website passed around by teenagers. Methodologically, maybe it's flawed. Maybe we should be looking at this other research. So making sure that you have some kind of evaluation in there. Any inconsistencies, any gaps in research, any points for further study, as we've said. And then the thing that you should really end on is why has all of this led to your question, your topic? What is this illuminated about what you're about to say in your methodologies? In other words, well, I read all of this stuff and it made me realize that I needed to do this. And the reader the connection there should be really clear. The reader reading that should be like, of course this is what you did next. Of course you took all of this information and you're now doing this experiment to find out this question, which I'm super intrigued about because they've just gone through 20 pages of explaining why we don't know this. And I'm like, I really want to know. That's how you should feel reading a dissertation. Even your own dissertation, you should be like, yes, it's so good. So that's just kind of the summary of the literary review. I know a lot of you are at that point, so does anyone have any questions about that?
When there's like one argument and 10 authors claim that specific argument, do you need to put all these 10 authors in brackets and refer them, or how do I refer when there's so many authors saying that point?
Yeah, what I would do is this. Some points, if a point is controversial, reference it a lot. So if someone is saying, if you're saying something that you think is against the norm, but a bunch of other people say it too, do reference that significantly. Otherwise, you're going to choose the most important and the most recent. So if, in 1950 someone said it, but they were like, well, it wouldn't be in 1950, but in psychology, if Freud said it, reference Freud, but also if someone has just said it this year in another study, those two. So pick the ones that are like everyone's heard of, the really important ones in your field, and also pick the ones that are like recent good sources. Mm-hmm. Right? So also if Wikipedia said it and a peer-reviewed journal said it, go with the peer-reviewed journal. Obviously, that won't be an issue for you, but think about what's the most sort of valid, relevant, classy kind of source that you can pick. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, but the thing is that, most of them, they're like very recent authors, so it's 2013. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know exactly, and I'm not quite sure, who exactly weighs the most from these authors.
Okay, in that case, I would say just do the sort of the three that you thought made the point the best.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The ones that you were like, because remember, in this situation, it's obviously a backed up point. The main thing that you want to do is signpost people. Like, if you wanted to read further about this, I would recommend these three people say it really well. They really back up this point well. That's kind of in this level of academics, that's what you're really doing. You're saying to read further and be further convinced by this point, go here. And then from there, they could find the other 10 people who say it not that well.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
No worries. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yes, my supervisor suggested to me that put the limitation about my methodology in the introduction part, just a little bit. And then should I state in my literature review about the limitation of the method?
Is that your methodology for your research?
Yeah.
Don't put it in the literature review. That's where you would discuss other people's methodological limitations. Right. So if you've read an article and you say like, oh, that person has this really fascinating research that really supports my point, but they only surveyed 10 people. You're going to want to mention like, that's not, even though you're going to still talk about the research, you're going to say that's not good enough. Yeah. For yours, you're going to mention your methodology in your introduction. If you have limitations, yes, absolutely mention it a little bit in your introduction. Just flag it up for people like, by the way, when you read this, there's going to be a limitation. And then it's this section, your methodology, that'll have the actual limitation. Okay. So do you know what's the purpose of a methodology? Just really quick.
Just identify why you do this and how you achieved your goal of this research.
Absolutely. It's basically like what you did or how you did it, and the amount, the methodology has to be is repeatable. So someone has to be able to look at that and go, oh, I could do those steps and hopefully come up with the same result. That's what makes it scientific. It might be a qualitative research, in which case then you're just going to explain how you did it in the same way. So if you did interviews with people, that's obviously not, there's parts of that that aren't quantitative, but you're going to say, I did interviews where I asked these questions in this kind of setting, so that someone could go out and do that again, even if they come up with different results potentially. So it's just repeatable, like you said. And then why? So why did you choose a survey or choose a certain kind of data analysis over anything else? And it's okay to use tentative language. I mean, you probably should be using tentative language, especially in the part about limitations. So this limitation has a probable consequence of this. It is possible that this affected my study in this way. Because you don't know for sure, unless you do, in which case, say that. But you probably don't know for sure. So is that okay for everyone? Or is this useful for you guys? Is this a thing that you're like, okay, I want to talk about this? Okay, because I feel like I'm talking a lot, which normally we would probably do more, but everyone's at a pretty early stage, so I don't know if this is helpful for you.
So I have limitations in 3 parts, I think: introduction, methodology, and literature review.
Right, but different limitations,
Yeah.
right? Because literature review is other people's limitations.
Yeah.
Methodology is your limitations. And also in your methodology, you can talk about why you didn't use other things. Like if you had options, if you were like, well, I was thinking about doing a survey, and I was thinking about doing interviews, and I was thinking about doing just a data analysis of like a different kind of experiment, and you picked one of those, you can explain why, like give your reasons, because explaining why as though you're just telling someone why you did something is a great way to add in that critical part. Because methodology is notoriously descriptive, because you have to describe how you did it so someone else could do it. So just making sure that it's like, well, why did I do this instead of that? If you answer that question, you'll be having a bit of that critical voice in there. Is that?
So justification for using the methodology,
Yeah.
particular type of methodology.
Well, and yes, absolutely. And in your introduction, you're saying it happens 3 times. Yeah, in your introduction, everything sort of happens. It's like they're a bit repetitive in that sense, that you are going to signpost everything. So you might not say outright what your limitations are, or if you do, you'll then be discussing them later, right? So you won't say exactly, you're not going to copy and paste from your introduction into your methodology, but you are going to mention that those are there, because your introduction is telling you all the different sort of things you're going to mention throughout the rest of your paper, right? So, and then, as I said, the lit review is a different kind of limitation than the methodology. It's like criticizing other people, criticizing yourself. Those are both fun, but okay. Yes, and this is just a different breakdown of depending on your discipline. So if you're more in the humanities side, you're probably going to have a more qualitative or it's kind of a softer experiment. So you're going to talk about the selection of your resources then. If you're more on the sciences side, then obviously it's going to be more about a rationale for what you actually did in your experiment and how you can do it again. And then social sciences, which I think is where most people are going to be at, is going to be about your fit between your methods and your actual research question. So again, like, why did you do this instead of anything else? How it was collected, so how you actually got your data, and if it's qualitative or quantitative, and why you chose to do something qualitative or quantitative. And then any limitations, as we've said. The other thing you want to make sure of is that if you're following a specific methodological framework in a philosophical sense, like if you're not just doing the, Briggs example of test tube testing, but you're also saying like, actually, I wanted to follow this particular framework of giving surveys or this particular interpretive framework for how I'm going to now take these people's information, you need to talk about that as well. So don't think of methodology as just literal. It also means any kind of overarching framework that you're using from your discipline. which you probably should have a style or a method of interpretation. Andrew, you're looking a little frightened. Are you?
No.
Said no. It's okay. Okay, good. Then really quickly the results. I'm nowhere near on my. There it is. So results again are really important to present clearly and concisely. You probably have lots of data that you got, lots of different things. That belongs in the appendix. The interpreted data that is represented in a clear table or a clear graph or that is summarized clearly and then can be discussed is what you want to present. So don't feel like you have to show everything. It's definitely about the useful data, the interesting data, and again showing that in a clear and concise way, which I think that makes sense to everyone. And there's a lot of help for this online as well. You just can look up like showing data effectively and you'll get 100 hits and a lot of them are really good. So just keep that in mind, that it might look really clear to you because you've been working with it for a long time, but just ask someone not in your discipline, like, does that make any sense? And if they're like, they look at you like, just consider redoing it. So see, it's not that you have to have graphs or tables to present, it's that you need to be able to make it in a clear and concise way. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be down to the way that you structure your actual discussion. So make sure that the different sections have their own, like their mini essays. So it'll have an introduction that says, basically, this is what I found. And then it'll have paragraphs, the topic sentence of which should be, for instance, in this case, and this is what this paragraph is going to be about, this part that I found. And then, so just breaking it down and making sure everything's really clear. And then, now to discuss that, this will be, so does that make sense as a...
It does.